It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, welcome everyone to the Sam Lesante Show. Thanks for tuning us in. I'm Sam Lesante, and celebrating our 40th anniversary doing the Sam Lesante Show. Thank you for making us the #1 talk show in Northeastern Pennsylvania. Now, for those of you who would like to know, if you go to your information on your TV channel, you could see what shows are coming up. But our complete grid of all the shows we have are right here on pick up a Panorama magazine, and you can see all of the shows, when they run, the airtime. The other side is the Comcast. We are also in Pottsville and, of course, Wilkes-Barre at the weekends. But this month we're featuring Dr. Mead and attorney Alexis Falbello. But there's all the information you may need. Now, today's show, another show I love to do, it's talking about people from our area who have been around and have done great things. And my guest today is Ronnie Sando. Now, if you recall, years ago when I had my talent show, Spotlight, Ronnie was a guest on it a few times. And at that time, he was doing a lot of great things in Detroit and Nashville. He's a pioneer of rock and roll. And so I found the book that he wrote. And you got to get this book. It's really fabulous. My Life Under the Cloud of Elvis, okay? Ronnie, you had some kind of a career, haven't you?
Yeah.
You know,
it was a good ride, though.
Yeah, it was a very interesting.
It was hard.
Some of the things that you went through here, okay, is amazing, you know. For those of us who are older in life, you're going to be mentioning names that, we all know. The younger people probably don't know them. They have their own stars these days. But let's go back to Ronnie when, how did you become interested in music?
I was in elementary school in Beaver Meadows, and the math teacher put together every Friday, an hour before we closed for the week. She put a little talent show. So you had to tell her you wanted to be on it, tell her what you wanted to do. Her name was Josephine Treadle. She was from Beaver Meadows. So I knew about 2 songs. And one song was Good Night, Irene.
Okay.
Remember that song?
Oh, very well.
Well, I told her I wanted to be on the talent show, and she looked at me, she said, okay. So I went on the show Friday. She played piano, and I sang Good Night, Irene. I enjoyed it. So I went up her house that night, and I was only probably 10 years old, 11 years old, in around there. And I knocked at the door, her mother answered. Her mother's name was Carletta Treadle. And I said, Carletta, I said, she said, how you doing? I said, all right. I said, I come to see your daughter. Could I talk to her? She said, yeah, Joseph, come on in. She's in the piano. She's playing the piano. So we went in. I went in the living room, and she's playing the piano. Her mother stopped there, told her I was there. So she took me back. And I said, Miss Treadle, I said, I enjoyed that singing today. I said, I'd like to be a singer, maybe play a piano. Could you teach me piano and how to sing professionally? She said, Joseph, she said, you don't have that kind of talent. She said, go play football and with your buddies and forget about being a star.
Yeah,
singing.
Yeah.
And I was left at that.
Well, you were 12 years old. In the book, you say you were 12 years old.
Yeah, about in around 11, 12.
Yeah.
And it was funny because when I got with Elvis's band down in Nashville, there was an article in the Standard Speaker. So I came home and I went to the post office. Everybody in Beaver Meadows walks to the post office. Mm-hmm. Now they drive because they have cars.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and there was a bunch of people in there talking, and you know how it was the meeting room. Mm-hmm. And I looked, and Miss Treadle was getting her mail. So I just stood there. When she got her mail, she turned, she looked at me. Oh, she said. She come over, she hugged me. And she leaned right by my ear and she said, I blew that one, didn't I?
How did you then get involved with, what happened after that? I mean, when you got involved with music then?
Well, I got to be friends with Joe Calabrese.
Yes, very, very nice guy.
Yeah, and I was about 15 years old. And Joe let me sing with his band, the Chords.
Yep.
I'd go to the club, I had to sit at a table by the band, and I could have a soda, that's it. And Joe would call me up and I'd sing one or two songs. The Chords were like a big band sound. They were from that era. They didn't do rock and roll. So I started singing rock and roll with them. I was the first rock and roll singer, actually, in Hazleton, in the area. And that's how I got going with Joe. We wrote a couple songs, and then I had to go in the Army. I come out of the Army. Paul Brody was a shoemaker. Paul was singing with them then. And he had recorded a song that Joe and I had written. It was called I'm Just a Fool. So Joe asked me, you want to come back with the band? He had Paul Brody and Carol Gall. They used to call her Gigi Carroll. But at that time, Tony Nicholas, the Chords were doing a lot of light rock and roll. They wouldn't get into the Chuck Berry, the Elvis stuff, Tony liked blues, Tony Nicholas.
Yeah.
Caledonia was his prize play.
Yeah.
But anyway, I said, Joe, no, you're set with all this, I'm not gonna, you're gonna get rid of one of them or two of them. And Tony Nicholas insisted that, he said, Joe, this guy's our future. He said, this guy will take us places.
How old were you then?
When I got out of the Army, I was 18.
You went in young.
Yeah. Joe and I had written a bunch of songs.
Mm-hmm.
And
what were you playing then? What instrument were you
I
playing?
didn't play an instrument back then. Joe said, why don't you record that song, Rockin' on the Moon? I said, because the Russians had just put Sputnik up. That's where I got the idea for the song, Rockin' on the Moon. In fact, the word Sputnik was in the song. So I said, yeah, okay. So we practiced it with the Chords, went to New York to Universal Artists. They had Universal Artists on Realm Records, the company. And I was going to record it. We made the deal, and I said to Joe, songs have 4 verses back in them days. So I said, I got to write a verse. I took a sheet of paper, boom, boom, boom. I wrote it right out. So we come back, and they said a recording date, but they called Joe. They said, we're not going to use your band. We're going to put them with a band from New York City called the Ambassadors. So I went down myself, drove down, and we recorded it with the Ambassadors. They went on to be a big band.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. They were only starting out, but they brought a black kid in. He was 16 years old. He did all the sax work on it. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't pleased with it because I was more into the Memphis sound, Carl Perkins, that Elvis, that sound. But I met a lot of bands in my future that I was at shows or, that were horn bands. And they said, you're the guy who wrote Rockin' on the Moon. I said, yeah, why? They said, that's our cover band. We cover that song. They loved it, the horn bands. So from there, I come home. The record company said, when they got everything figured out, they said, well, we can't release this. I said, why? They said, you sound too much like Elvis Presley. So they shelved it.
Because you sounded like him.
Yeah. They shelved the song, and then they brought it out in '58.
So what did you do then? How did you do?
Well, I started doing shows in New York City with the record company, them shows that they put together. They put 8, 10 artists, you know. Yeah. And I come home, and I formed my own band. I called it Ronnie Sando and the Fantastic Gigolos. We played the area of the 60s up in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area for 10 years. Started up there one night a week. In the Ovalon up there was the first place I played. And I ended up, Joe Nardone and I were the top bands for 10 years up in that valley. I did clubs. Joe did more shows, you know. Yeah. And I wasn't satisfied with that. So I come home and I went to New York City. And the first day I was in New York City, I was introduced to a guy by the name of Saul Yeager. He was a jazz clarinetist. He did the Benny Goodman story, that soundtracks, the Frank Sinatra story. Played a clarinet. So he had a band called the Saul Yeager Jazz Trio. He said, I'm playing in a club. The name of the club was the Red Blazer. He said, I'm playing in a club tonight down in, I forget what street where it was, but it was downtown. I said, yeah, I can stay down and I'll stay over, you know. So I went down with the guy that introduced me to him. And we sat there and Saul come over, they did the first set. He said, why don't you come up and sing? I said, I don't sing jazz. He said, don't you know any of the old songs? I said, yeah, a couple of the Pennies from Heaven, and I mentioned 2 or 3. He said, well, come up and do them. I said, all right. So he called me up. I sang the Pennies from Heaven, and we did the song Kansas City. He said Kansas City Blues, we called it. So I sang the 2 songs, and then, you know, I went down, I sat down, he come down. He had a girl singer. And he had the big band Effect with 3 guys. Yeah. They sat on the stage, and the singer, the girl, sat over to the side of the stage in a chair. And, well, I was the second one in the second chair. Yeah. But I moved up to the first one pretty quick. Yeah. So we played all the Red Blazers in New York, Defemios up in Yonkers, the Jasbo Collins TV show, Les Lieber's Jazz at Noon. And I met Lionel Hampton, Louis Bellson, you know, were guests at some of them things. It was something good that I did, because jazz polishes your voice. It gives you that finesse that you don't have. But rock and roll, really you don't need it. Yeah. And I met Conway Twitty's road manager. One night he was in the club, and he said, you know, you sing jazz, but you're not singing real jazz. You're singing putting blues touches to everything. I said, yeah. He said, what kind of music do you like? I said, rockabilly, rock and roll. You know, well, it was rockabilly back then. Country, I said, I do some country. He said, I want to make you meet Conway. He said, where do you live? I said, Pennsylvania. He said, where? I told him, Hazleton. He said, we're playing at Hershey 2 Fridays from now. Why don't you come down, be our guest? I said, all right. So I told Saul, I'm not singing this week, because I used to sing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then go home. I said to my wife, come on, we're going to Hershey Park Friday. She said, what do you mean we're going to Hershey Park? I said, I'm going to be Conway Twitty's guest. You're going to be Conway Twitty's guest at Hershey Park. She said, yeah, we'll go, because I'm making a fool out of myself. Yeah. You're not going to, that ain't going to happen. Yeah. Well, anyway, I went down, and sure enough, I went in, I told them who I was at where they sell the tickets. Yeah. They said, stay on the side there. They called him, he come out, come on. Took me back, I was in an area by myself, roped off. Ronnie McDowell opened for Conway Twitty. He did that song that The King Is Gone. I enjoyed Ronnie's song. Then Conway come out, and he brought the house down when he come out, you know. When the show was done, the manager come up, he said, jump the rail. I jumped the rail, he said, come on. He took me back and introduced me to Ronnie and Conway. So I like Conway, don't get me wrong, you know, but he wasn't in the mix that what I was looking for. But Ronnie McDowell was. So I didn't see Ronnie or Conway after that for a pretty good couple of years. Then I used to hang around Nashville. For the first couple of years, they wouldn't call me up to sing. I said, can I come up and sing? What's your name? I said, Ronnie Sando. Where are you from? Hazel, Pennsylvania. I'll see if I can get you up when we go back. They never called me.
And from that, you know, there was a lot of other stories. I'm talking to Ronnie Sando, my friends, and what he's doing is he's giving us a background as to the book, My Life Under the Cloud of Elvis. In here, he explains in detail, he's giving you an approach of how it started going into when he went to Detroit and what he saw in Detroit and went in Nashville and the things he had to go through. But most importantly is the success he had with his record. It's #1 in Europe. And what happens, you know, there's a lot of politics being played. And as you said, it's, what is it, 20% talent, 80%, what was the word?
They said that you need 20% talent, 80% luck.
Yeah. And isn't it the truth, my friends? We'll be back right after this.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm your host, Sam Lesante. Now, today's first guest is a man whose extraordinary credits include performing with the Jordanaires, backup singers for the legendary Elvis Presley. I want you to know that this particular person is the only person ever to sing with the Jordanaires and the Elvis Presley Band since Elvis Presley. It's our pleasure on Wolf TV and Spotlight Talent Showcase to introduce to you R.J. Colton.
Get out those silk sheets, baby. Your daddy's coming home. Get out those silk sheets, baby. Your daddy's coming home. Put out that candle, give that wine. Oh, tonight you're mine.
My guest today is Ronnie Sando. Ronnie wrote a book, My Life Under the Cloud of Elvis. Interesting story of what he went through and how he experienced so many great things. Ronnie, in your going through this thing of singing, tell us what happened in Detroit.
I went out to Detroit and my mother and father were divorced, but she lived out there. I went out and I stayed with her for a while, me and my wife, and she lived on a lake. And I started playing, I was playing bass guitar then, and I started singing with some of the bands on the lake. It was all country bands. And I was playing one night, and the waitress come up and she said, Ronnie, them two black guys sitting at that table over there said they want to talk to you. Do you want to talk to them? I said, yeah. So when we took a break, I went down. The guy introduced himself. His name was Johnny Griffiths. At the time, I didn't know who Johnny Griffiths was. He said, why don't you come down to Detroit? He said, I got some people I'd like you to meet. He said, I was here before listening to you. I said, all right. So he told me where the address was, and my mother's husband drove me down because I didn't know Detroit at the time. We went down and we went up in the building. I forget what floor it was on. We walked in. And the first guy I seen, I said, I know you. He said, yeah, Marvin Gaye. He shook my hand.
Marvin Gaye.
Yeah. I thought, oh boy, what am I into here? There was about 6 or 8 black guys in the building, all sharp dressed. So Johnny said, come on with me. We went over. He said, Ted, he said, Ronnie, this is Ted White. I said, Mr. White, how you doing? He said, this is the guy I was telling you about. So I said, you know, what do you do? He said, this is our theatrical agency, it was called. They had different artists and this and that. I seen Sonny Liston's picture, Aretha Franklin's picture. I said, you know Aretha Franklin? He said, yeah, that's my wife. Ted White is the name of it. Well, anyway, the other guy with him was Harvey Fuqua, the vice president of Motown Records, and Barry Gordy. He said, I want to sign you to a contract,
Wow.
but I want to listen to you first. Can you stay down here? I said, yeah. I said, I brought my amp and everything, you know. So we go to a club. He introduced me to a trio. The drummer was white, and the other two guys are black.
Yeah.
Chuck Mann Trio. He introduced me to them. He said, listen, he's going to play with you tonight. He plays bass. They said, what kind of music do you do? I said, rockabilly. He said, that's all we do, you know, that new rock and roll. So I played with them, and what's his name? Ted White signed me to a contract the next day.
This is Aretha Franklin's husband.
Yeah. Signed me to a contract the next day. There was a club in the black section. It was the second biggest club in the Club Burner. It was called in the city. We played there. Things start rolling. All of a sudden, they're burning the city down.
That's when the
I hit
riots.
the racial riots.
In the book.
Yeah.
Okay. You explain. You talk about all these things in the book. Okay. And it breaks down to, you know, and we could go on for another 2 hours.
Oh.
But the book breaks down interesting stories. Okay. For example, you know, you met Elvis Presley. Okay.
Yeah.
And you had Johnny Cash. You met Johnny Cash, Merle Herbert, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, Jerry Lee Lewis. These are names that older people would understand. And I'm sure there's stories which you cover in this book, which that's what I found interesting. Because I also thought this is a learning book too, you know.
I was told by somebody that reviewed the book, every kid that starts with music
Yes.
should read that book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you set a roadmap for them how
Yes. Yeah.
hard it is and what you had to do.
And that's so true. Being in music myself, having my own band, you know, the Lancers, and of course Johnny Morato, my partner for 25 years, you know, he played with the chords, as you know. But you know, if you're interested in music and you want to have a career, this is a book, my friends, that, you know, tells a very interesting story. When I had you on the show, if you remember Spotlight, okay, I was amazed at the range that you had. In fact, I can still remember you. I think you have a
How
copy.
about the Kirby?
The Kirby, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, when you
Elvis's band.
the range that you had, there's no question, you know, that you.
American Trilogy, I hit the C.
Yeah,
high C.
yeah. I
One
mean, it
octave
was.
up.
Yeah, it was just amazing. And this came. I mean, you didn't have like any professional
Training, no.
Training. This is the interesting thing. Of course, Father Joseph Ferrara was able to play every instrument.
Yeah.
You know, he had that talent.
Well, I
right?
never took a music lesson, and I played trumpet, bass guitar, rhythm guitar, lead guitar I can play, and piano.
Yeah. How would you describe your journey through life so far?
If a kid don't have a dream, he's not a kid. And if you have a dream, no matter how hard it is, some have it easy because their parents have a lot of money or connections. But not having all that, you can make it if you follow that dream. Sometimes it's hard. When I first started on the road, like New York, I had to come back and work for Pagnotti.
It's right. Yeah.
You know, to build money up so I could go away again, leave money for my family, my kids at the time. But if you pursue that dream, you have to have some talent.
Oh my God, yeah.
These guys, when I was with Elvis's band, with Fontana and Charlie Hodgson, I met some of the best promoters and guys in the world. Joe Esposito, I did a show for his brother John in Atlanta, Georgia, you know. And you're talking big time people, and I learned one thing. DJ always told me, when I first met you, what I liked about you, when I was introduced you to somebody, another big entertainer, you sat there and listened. You learn. You didn't butt in. How much bigger can you get than the guys he's with? I
That's
can't
right.
tell
Well,
him
you
too
had
much.
a great.
I learned off him.
Yeah, you did. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate
Always
that
a
very
pleasure.
much. Yeah, thank you very much. My friends, remember, pick up the panorama. All of our shows are listed, the entire grid. Every month we have it there, and I appreciate you making this show the #1 talk show in northeastern Pennsylvania. We'll see you next time.